Hey there, Downers. This is Daniel. Not sure if Downers is what we're calling people who listen, but not sure if anyone's listening, so who cares? Just happy to do another episode here amongst the COVID. Not going out to interview anyone in person, even though I always prefer to interview in person. But because I'm not interviewing in person, I can expand my range from the Denver scene that I've come to know and love to the South Florida scene that birthed my comedy placenta. So the first person I thought about when thinking about South Florida comedy was Matt Z. He is an incredible person, as you will soon find out. The quick content warning is a fair amount about body dysmorphia, so heads up there. And thank you. Enjoy. Appreciate ya. Stay safe out there.
Hey, buddy. Good.
How are you?
Oh, damn.
Oh, there's a cat.
What are you talking about? I don't hear anything.
You?
You might have had one too many beer.
Or the cat?
Yeah, I'm talking to the cat. It's too early to be this drunk, Sadie.
Yeah.
Freaking cat arose. First of all, it's cool that it's like no time has passed at all, but in reality, quite a bit of time has passed.
Yeah.
Since we were regular hanging parts of the comedic lifestyle way back in Florida.
Yeah, man.
How it's probably, I've been in Denver 5, so it's probably been at least like 7 or 8 years since you moved away from Hollywood, kinda. And
I was in Hollywood, Florida, by the way, not the cool one.
yes, that's where we met, in Hollywood, Florida.
I went back to school in 2012, and I was still doing shows a little bit. Yeah, so 2013. Yeah, 7 years.
Nice. So, this is a podcast about why we walk away, why hilarious people who should be at the top of the comedy world just aren't for any number of life reasons. You are one of those people I think of immediately, that the funniest people are not necessarily the people at the top, because there's so much else involved in kind of playing the game or jumping through hoops or marketing or who knows the many things that, aside from being funny, are important in making a popular or successful stand-up comedian. To me, you seemed like someone who just either didn't want to or didn't care, didn't give a shit about any of that other bullshit. And back then, people knew you as just one of the most crushing forces in the comedy scene. When Matt Z was at a show, everyone knew the shit was going to get blown up. You had that kind of heavyweight reputation. Now, I know there's other things, like you didn't want to do clubs and things like that. I'm doing the entire interview both sides, by the way. That's just a little background of the kind of perception of kind of just where things were in like those late 2000s. And
Yeah, the late 2000s would be when I was at sort of the top of my game, you might say.
Right. And, I appreciated that no compromise belief, but I know there was always like that struggle. So I don't know if you could just feel free to talk about like how you ended up walking away from stand-up.
Yeah, no, specifically about what you were talking about, it's always especially because no one knows who I am, and it's sort of a weird past tense thing. I don't do it anymore. It's you feel really weird going, I killed a lot, but like you were saying, I killed a lot, and but it's kind of a curse when you're the guy who kills in bars and small comedy shows and things, because I got really, really good at that really quick. And then I basically spent 5 years doing that, instead of the steps that go beyond, where people, then they try to move on to clubs, and then they try to move on to doing it more as a business and not just a thing you do because you feel some kind of weird compulsion and you can call it art and you can justify wasting your life doing it, But I was kind of getting the pure form of the reward insofar as I was getting the positive attention and I was getting a lot of laughter and I had a nice social group. The best part of comedy, always more than performing, was getting to hang out with comedians, like just being at shows and being fun and enjoying each other and completely ignoring whoever's on stage because we were just sitting outside bullshitting with each other. That was always the best part for me. And so in one way I got like a great amount of success, just kind of that meaningless but fulfilling success.
Right. That just maybe not meaningless, but intangible.
Yeah. You know, I was a pretty big fish in a very, very, very small in an eyedropper. You know what I mean?
The Floridian swamp.
Yeah. But so that makes life difficult too, because then anytime I tried to do something with the skill set that I had cultivated outside of those kind of places or those kind of shows, when they would try to put me on regular shows at the Improv for normal people who were just showing up, and I say normal, I'm an arrogant asshole, I guess, but you know what I mean? It's the difference of young people or just bar people or people who have gone out to drink and enjoy themselves versus a sort of formal event. It's weird to call the Improv formal. There's a thing I'm looking for where, because there was always
comedy, for sure.
Yeah, there was, and
get
that's
a babysitter and go out.
Yeah, and I never could. I just what I did never really worked as well. Every time I was put in those environments, except for a few times, it just never quite worked the way I wanted to. And then everybody comes out of the woodwork, and they're trying to they're trying to help, and I understand. But the advice that they're giving is just how to become more like a typical club comedian, and not that that's a bad thing, but I was never going to be able to be that, and so there's that element that emerged kind of early on because I was getting a lot of spots and people always wanted to book me, and it wasn't hard to have a pretty full calendar around South Florida because South Florida is so big, but Miami.
Mind driving a little bit.
Yeah, well, that was all I did. I dropped out of. I had gone down to live with my grandma. You know what I mean? That was another aspect of what was going on in that time. I was unemployed for most of my comedy career, and I lived with my grandma. And toward the end, I was using the gig money to pay for gas and shit, and that's how I got around. So it was kind of all I did. So I between Miami and West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, in the middle there.
It's a good 3-hour spread or so.
Yeah, but and I lived right in the middle. Hollywood is kind of right in the middle. So for me, it was an hour and a half either way. It was kind of the furthest I had to go. Mm-hmm. So I got up all the time, and but I was never really able to take the thing that I was doing and put it in a more conventional setting. And that I realized pretty quickly. But I was successful enough doing the sort of bars and small open mics and comedy shows at bars and those sort of things, one-nighters too, I always did good at. That was the thing. Like on the road, I did pretty well the few times I did it. When we would go do Bonkers or like Coconuts or places like that were those regular weekend sort of, those are a little bit more Wild Westy. And as long as you can get the crowd on your side, I really, but now also this sounds like a terrible hack justifying himself. And I think there is an element of that too,
No, I mean, like this is coming from a more credible position because it's way harder to make those people laugh in the bars than it is in the clubs. And a hack would be saying that like they went out to the bring friends and family in the audience night and crushed it at the Improv,
Right.
Like, not being able to translate is such an interesting problem because it makes me think that maybe the club, it wasn't you, like the advice everyone was giving you to fit your comedy into this club box was killing your comedy, was weakening it, was compromising it. And
that's probably true. And I couldn't lose myself in it. There's an element of performance. And that's the thing that it needs to be stressed. And anybody who's listening to this does probably suspect already, because we're talking about me killing really hard in bars. I committed really hard. I got lost in the performance. I wasn't like super big, but I yelled a lot. I had stuff.
You broke the mold for sure.
Yeah, but it was like there was an element of it too that was like me getting whipped up and lost in the moment, which I think everybody would tell you is a part of doing comedy and doing it well. But there's the element where I look like a bar person. People see me, and as I've gotten older, I've got long hair, I've got a beard, I dress in black, I wear heavy metal t-shirts. I'm one of those. I look like a bar person. So when I'm at a bar doing a comedy show or even a small sort of weird artsy theater thing or whatever, I don't necessarily look out of place. Mm-hmm. And then, my act was sort of being pleasantly repulsive and all that sort of shit, winning people over. Oh, he's a valid person too. Look at that sort of thing. I don't know.
Right. Like I look so different, but I'm a human. And there's a certain element of kind of Stanhopeness, for lack of a better.
No, let's not even, I was a carbon copy of Doug Stanhope when I first, his act was the one that kind of gave me the I was like, oh shit, people that think like this and like this sort of thing are out there. But I was doing the voice, I was doing this fake stutter. I mean, the whole thing. And that's another thing that was really difficult because again, you develop a certain skill set and you eventually realize even the stuff that I've built on top of that is my own it goes back a little bit to that stuff. It's hard. It's hard to you and then when you realize, but then there's the part of you that goes, there is no authentic me either. Everything I am is a version of myself. So this quest for something that's not there isn't there either. And when I've talked with other comedians about that, it's the consensus is usually everybody is doing a version of somebody when they start, and it kind of becomes your version as you keep going. Mm-hmm. And I guess it might be fair to say that that's the case, but that is another thing that was really hard too. Is like as I got older, for instance, as I get older, when I was in 24, 25, and my whole act was getting drunk and yelling at people about internet pornography. And the crowds were, so as I've gotten into my 30s, when I would try to do those same jokes, there's a degree of menace that comes with me being older, because it's about me and my deviant sexuality.
Not just a young 20-something figuring shit out, but a hardened 30-year-old who has his fetishes.
Yeah. And it changes the way, it changes the way some of that stuff comes off, because I'm not like baby-faced and pudgy anymore. I'm still pudgy, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Damn.
That's a thing I definitely noticed. And that, now, granted, I noticed that in the few times I've done comedy since then, and also just from my personal taste looking back. Like, I do understand, even though I'm still an asshole about music, I definitely understand when bands don't want to play the old songs anymore, because we're just not those people anymore. And I do kind of get that, the idea of going back up on stage and doing my Axe deodorant smells like date rape joke is
right.
Like, okay, well, I mean, first of all, it's 15 years dated, and second of all, it's like,
you're not that person. You've outgrown that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the pitfalls of comedy, is when your material prevents you from developing as a human, or growing, continuing.
Toward the end, I think that's why mostly what I was doing was a lot of, and again, it's all hack shit, right? But I was doing a lot more crowd work and trying to be spontaneous and talk to the crowd. You know what I mean?
That's not hack shit, but I get it. That's coming from a desire to have something real.
Yeah. And that, because I really don't have anything to say to most strangers. That's the thing that's really difficult about the kind of person that I am. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of I despite, every comedian describes themselves as introverted, right? But I kind of am. I'm really, I lock myself away from the world, and I'm comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. I don't mind being alone. It's not trouble. You know what I mean? I kind of look forward to long stretches of not having to do anything or see anyone. It's a nice thing.
Loving this quarantine, huh?
Well, I would if I wasn't still working. I'm expecting to be fired at some point next week, and I'm really hoping that I get a couple months break, or not a couple months, but a couple weeks would be nice.
What a Twilight Zone way for you to be in this perfect time to stay home, yet you have an essential job.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair. That's right.
Well, damn. Well, I'll say, just for the record, that even though you may have felt like a Stanhope clone, because you can always tell when someone's like, oh, that person's just doing Stanhope. Or you came off as someone who's like, that person would do great opening for Stanhope. That person would go well, not derivative, but, and we did open for Stanhope, which is one of the, badges that almost every human in Florida has, but still an amazing badge nonetheless. Yeah. I was looking back some of our clips that we made, or we did that talk show. We did the food laser thing.
Food laser was funny, man. Food lasers, that was like fun, avant-garde, mixed media. That was just a little doodle in your book. We were hanging at your house and writing and getting stoned. And one of your little margin doodles was a laser and a man with his tongue out like, ah! and it said food laser, exclamation point. And I was like, this is wonderful.
I forgot the genesis of that. I was watching the video. Yeah, I'll link to that in the description so people can not watch it.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was such a fun, just from out of that, just the whole little video blossomed. And then that was the live show we did. The live talk show was sponsored by Food Laser. We did the little food laser at the beginning and everything.
Yeah.
It was a fun, crazy thing, and it was like I'm mixed media. Again, I hate myself for trying to speak intelligently. I always feel like I miss and make it flowery, you know. But the way that went from being a drawing to a video, and the video is really stream of consciousness. It's very strange, and there's a caveat to where it seems like we're on drugs the whole time, and we kind of were, but not really, you know. There was a lot of fun that was done with that. That was something that was a really special, little, fun, stupid thing that grew out of nothing. That grew out of the tiniest little, you know.
Right. Just hanging out. And to skip ahead to what usually is the end of the podcast for regrets that I try to ease, is I regret not doing that like 50 more times with you.
Yeah.
Or that's how YouTube is. That's what, and
Right.
especially back then it would have been
Right.
even more special. But that's just comedy.
Yeah. No, that's true. That one kind of went so well. I don't know. We never really talked about it, but the one show we did, it turned out to be pretty good. You know, the video turned out to be funny. People had a good time. You know, I think that we could have, but part of me is like, we both kind of, we really got away with something here. And then we,
Yeah. I think and maybe you could speak to it. I feel that like it might have had to do with the scene in the way that now living in Denver and seeing like what a larger, fuller scene can do. If we had done that in somewhere like Denver, New York, LA, or somewhere, we would have gotten more mileage out of it. We could have got more gas and support, and we might have done more of it. We might have, had more people willing to have venues to do that kind of thing, or lived in a city that was easier to be able to be a working artist in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, man, I see that myself. And, my first open mic, I met Mike Lawrence at, and I was taking him around to early open mics when I was first getting started. I was picking him up and driving him, and we were doing, 2 or 3 nights a week and then he up and moved to New York. And I was like, I don't think I'd even been doing it for a full year yet. And I was like, this seems like way too soon. And then you look at it now, he's a working professional. He made that, that jump, and he pulled it off. And I'm sure he went through really hard times and everything, but he actually did it. And same thing. I stayed in South Florida, and I was very successful in one way, but in other ways it was like it's a cat chasing its tail sort of thing,
Yeah.
I'm just going to belch into the microphone next time.
I'll get a couple good ones, and then I can just pepper them throughout.
Yeah. I tried to hide that one, and then I realized who I am and who you are.
Yes. And who our audience is. They're mostly failed comedians themselves. So it's
a lot of fun.
Who wants to hear another famous comedian talk about why they're famous?
Right. Reflect upon your success, you humbly, right?
Things just worked out, I mean, there were some hard times for sure. I have to say there were hard times, because if they don't, no one will respect me. But it worked out. Everything's great. Everyone's so talented. Everything is wonderful. Yeah, it's like a good set. Like you walk off stage, you just high five everyone, and you don't really know the nuances of what was particularly good. But if it's a terrible set, then you question every single word, and you go, why did I do this? And what happened? I must grow or I will die.
That's true. When you bomb, right, there's a part of your brain that always thinks it's one or two specific things, and you ponder them trying to find what it is. But when you kill, you never think it's one specific thing. Mm-hmm. It's, of course I killed. Why wouldn't I kill? It's like, but what if it was just because there was, just some stupid little thing that you did on the way up, and it made some lady in the front row giggle a little bit? You never know,
Yep. The crowd was just hot, or you were in a good spot, or you had a different energy that you didn't even realize. Or, I mean, those are the fun, nuances that eventually lead to becoming, a great stand-up if you can kind of navigate it and get lucky enough. But to divert it a little. So how long, I know you still kind of do stand up a little bit here and there.
Oh man. Yeah. Like once or twice a year, just to hang out with a couple friends. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like the most recent one was a real bad disaster.
Do tell.
I was in, here in Melbourne, I live in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and in Melbourne, Florida. I'm in a small Florida area, so everything is 2 towns over, that sort of thing. But you go to Melbourne, and there's a hardcore punk bar, which is amazing because we never had anything like that when I was a young man. And the place has they had an open mic. I was just there getting drunk because I kind of had a crush on the bartender, and the opportunity rarely arose. And then there was an open mic that the people, I had stayed there way too long and they'd gone long into the night. So all of a sudden it's like 8 or 9 at night. Hey, we're doing an open mic. Holy shit. And it was some of the Cocoa Beach people that I haven't seen in a while. Some of the Central Florida comedians, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I was drunk enough at that point where I was like, I don't care if I bomb, I can do 5 minutes. I can just do old jokes and have fun and be silly.
So wait, you knew right when you heard the open mic unexpectedly, there wasn't a debate. Am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? You were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah. It felt like a special moment. And, you know, it was serendipitous. And also, like I said, I was.
And for the girl, right. You're looking at it as a way to impress the opposite sex in a way that you can, when can you do that for the opposite sex in a natural way? Right. Or the same sex. Sorry, just for viewers, you know. I didn't mean to pigeonhole sex of love.
Well, no, if we're talking about me, we're talking about kind of the vague idea of another person, but not really their body and physical space. But that's a whole other mental, you know. Anyway, I've been at this bar for hours and I'm really drunk and I didn't realize how drunk I was. And I signed up for this show and proceeded to start getting really drunk on top of already being drunk. Cause I was like, all right, just a few drinks. And then I started, you know, 2-fisting beers. And by the time I go up, by the time it's time for me to go up, I didn't remember a lot of what happened. It's one of those things where the burst of adrenaline that you get when you from performing sobers you up sometimes. And so I realized that but anyway, there's an important part at the beginning of the story. The person who went on before me, this was a small local open mic. This was like 10 comedians performing for each other kind of open mic. You know what I mean? So everybody's doing jokes
mics, right.
Yeah. And so there's comics, some, you know, people, everybody knows everybody's jokes for the most part. We're trying out a few new things. We're rehearsing bits we need to have tight, that sort of shit. Girl goes on before me. I can tell she's a relatively new comedian and she's doing a lot of body-hating self-shame comedy. I do a lot of body-hating self-shame comedy. So I always approve of that sort of thing. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. I like it when I hear it. I don't care. But in a small room where nobody's laughing anyway, it did create kind of a tenseness, kind of a strange, it's an uncomfortable moment for a lot of people. When you hear someone repeatedly talking about their body in a shameful, hateful way, and then there's 10 seconds of silence and then here's another one, you know? Yeah. So it's time for me to go on stage and I'm drunk as shit. I'm so drunk. One of the first things I say when I get on stage is, oh my God, what have I done? I realize now I've made a terrible mistake, but I refuse to get off stage. I don't know, again, what the fuck was wrong with me. It was like, I was just like, there was a part of me that was like indignant at this point. Cause there was, you know, you're drunk. So there's like parts of your ego that are awake, but not your intelligent mind. And I'm like, I used to fucking be good at this. I can at least get through one goddamn joke. And I really couldn't. Right. And I was trying and failing and God.
Just kind of like not remembering the wordage of your classic bits.
Yeah. The whole thing, starting a sentence, finishing a second sentence, you know,
crazy
like
how it fades away.
Yeah. But then I was like, I've got jokes in my back pocket that are, you know, you think of them like Fitzsimmons calls them the grenades that you've got on your belt. So I was going to one of those, which is one of my, I hate my body jokes. And I've, you know, of course, the kind of person who, because I was sitting in the room, you have to comment on what's going on at the room. She's sitting right in front of me. So what I say is, hey, fat girl, I'm going to start doing my fat guy jokes. Let me show you how I do it, sort of thing. But I don't even get through that because I just go, hey, fat girl. It's very, very hazy. It's very, very hazy. No, what happens is I tried to talk to her about another dumb joke about receiving, I think, dicks in the mail, or it could have dicks on your phone, dicks in the mail. That's what I'm gonna send those dicks in the mail.
You just got a new $1 million business here, buddy.
I'm gonna sit down and write, you know, like real fancy calligraphy pen, and then like a black and white. Anyway, so I was trying to talk to her a little bit, is what it was, and then of course
trying to commiserate, trying to connect. Yeah.
Right. So this is already a really uncomfortable open mic situation. Anyway, I'm super drunk. I'm eating shit. I'm embarrassing myself and making everyone feel bad. And she decides she's going to get up and leave the room. And as she's getting out, I go, wait, fat girl, don't go. And that's when she ran away crying, right? And that's when, I'm sitting there just trying to be thinking I'm being clever, going, no, I'm about to launch into I hate my body. Here's how hideous I am. And let me commiserate with you by showing you I also do body dysmorphic humor because I'm fundamentally unsatisfied with the human condition. Let me, let us bond as. But of course, that's not how it comes off as. It just comes off as me, a big, giant 35-year-old biker going, hey, fat girl, don't go away. Where are you going?
God, right. And in that moment, anyone isn't understanding the nuance that you're setting the foundation for the story you're going to tell your grandchildren. No, You're just using the double standard of male entitlement to call someone fat when you yourself are fat. Don't you even know that?
Right. And then that was supposed to be the device was, hey, fat girl, don't go. And then I'm going to do my fat guy jokes now about, my awful bulges and how I'm covered in stretch marks and all that sort of shit. And I feel like if I had been even remotely sharp, I would have gotten all that out in one sentence. But instead, that's not what happened. So the idea was never communicated,
Right.
So at this point, she leaves. I don't notice that she's run away crying. I'm still on stage trying to get through one joke. Can't do it. Keep fucking up. Someone's trying to light me. I'm so drunk and realize that it's going very badly. I thought he was taking a picture,
posing for the light.
You're posing for the light.
Like I was. Then I get off stage, finally, somehow mercifully go to the back. Girls there crying. I start crying. I try to give her a hug. They don't want a hug. That's fine. And I have to go and I just have to leave. And now I don't go there anymore. And I just don't go to that place anymore. And that's how that story ends.
Damn.
Yeah. That's the most, it's probably the worst time I've ever had.
That's so poetic because that is kind of when you do stand up and then you stop doing it normally or regularly. That's one of the worst case scenarios you kind of envision of like, oh yeah, I can just do stand up every once in a while. It's something I always have.
Yeah. And especially because I still have there's still like the instincts are still strong. I'm still good in conversation. Mm-hmm. It's like a superpower you can turn on a little bit when you're dealing with people. Yeah. And I still do kind of file away little ideas for bits when they show up. So you always kind of have a handful of things. You think, oh, I'll just do this. This will be fine. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I was insanely drunk and it, oh God.
And the bartender and there's all these other elements at play.
Everything.
Other than just like, let me be funny. It's like, no, I want to impress the bartender. I need to represent myself in the scene. I got to dust off this old rusty sword that I had at my hilt. I got to, and by the way, what are my jokes?
Yeah. Yeah, and then I can remember the first sentence, but not the middle part, and then the punchline, which doesn't make sense because there's no middle part.
Yeah. Well, just, let it outside. That's a shitty time. How long ago was that? That was recently.
Yeah, that was like 6 to 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, and about 7 years since you stopped
doing it regularly.
The regular grind. Do you remember the process or how that stopped?
You kind of grow, you get to a point where you're doing the same thing with roughly the same result for so long. You feel kind of like you're spinning your wheels, all that sort of stuff.
Plateau.
You hit a strong plateau. I was 27. I was living with my grandma. I'd been doing comedy for like 5 years, 6 years, doing relatively well, creatively, artistically fulfilled group of friends, all that sort of shit, real great. Mm-hmm. Not much money. I was starting to be able to have 2 or 3, like $50, $20, $30 shows a week sort of thing where I could spin it like I couldn't support myself in any way, you know what I mean? And I kind of, at that point in time, I hadn't worked in years. I just didn't think about getting a regular job again. I don't know why. It wasn't that hard to do when I finally did, but I just didn't.
Well, you went straight from high school into comedy, right?
No, I did high school, and then I did 2 years at FSU. Not 2 years, 2 semesters at FSU. And then I moved back to the town I lived in for a year or so, and I had a couple small odd jobs. And I moved to South Florida to live with my grandma and work with a job that my uncle had got me down there. But it was always it was always I'm going to go to a bigger city and do comedy. That was the main reason why moving to South Florida was appealing to me, for sure. but then I got down there. I worked that job for a year and a half or whatever, started doing open mics. I lost that job, and I just never got another job. And I was living with my grandma. She was always kind enough to just kind of let me do it as long as I was doing something, you know? So
and
that was what I did.
Polite feelings would like me to ask how she is, but I'm afraid because it's a grandma.
Oh, she's doing all right.
Oh, God, I love her. Oh, she's such a sweet.
Yeah, she's
bless
still
her
kicking.
heart. Bless her soul.
Yeah, she's still up and going. She's going to turn 87 here in May.
Ah, what a gal.
Yeah, they don't, you know, she's one of those ones. She's had, all kinds of, she had a knee replaced in her 80s. She's up and about, you know, she's doing what she can, you know.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember smoking resin bowls on the back patio
back
of
porch,
grandma's house.
That's right.
And that was kind of work. That was kind of comedy for you. Was, are you making enough money to smoke weed, or are you making enough money to smoke resin bowls?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That was when, you know, being in the green or in the black, you know.
There it is for all our accountant listeners.
But yeah, and then grandma even called that porch the office. You know, like there was kind of a thing where that was where I worked. She was okay with that. You know?
She had such respect for a craft that maybe didn't deserve it.
Yeah, not at all. She wanted to believe in me, and she did, I guess, or she politely put up with it. I don't know.
Meemaw.
Yep. But I, you know, so I was living with that was, like I said, the lifespan of comedy for me was 5 or 6 years. I think 3.5, 4 of those, probably more, was unemployed, living with grandma. You know, started doing comedy when I was 21-ish, might have been early 22. And then, so I'm out by 27, you know. And then, let's see, I was doing real well for a long time, living with grandma, no real job, starting to make a small amount of money, starting to be able to pay for gas, pay for weed, pay for drinks at bars a little bit, not really, you know, I was always trying to hustle drinks, and it's really hard to do as a 300-pound man. You know what I mean?
You got to be really funny to get.
You got to be really fucking funny. And every time I bluntly asked the crowd to buy me drinks, they never would. So I just abandoned ship on that, and you had to kind of just put out the vibe that I'm the kind of guy who will hang out for free drinks.
Right. I definitely remember dudes coming up, "Hey, bro, you want to do a shot?" You're like, "Sure."
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 27 years old. I started to go back to school because I could get a Pell Grant, and community college was such that, you know, you could. I didn't need to buy books or anything, so I would just take the refund money basically. And for the whole semester. Then that was like a small padding I could get every semester. That only lasted for 4 semesters or whatever, but it was so easy that I just kept going, and I went into FAU. Yeah. But so in that time, I got a real bad staph infection. I was hospitalized. I had I guess I had a zit on the back of my ball sack. I don't really know exactly. I noticed like one time when I flipped out my junk to take a piss, and I'm one of these guys where I pull out my balls and my dick, because otherwise my waistband will pinch my dick and it's unpleasant and my stream is weak.
Team balls.
Yeah, flop the balls over the top, right? Then you get that nice clean stream. And I noticed that I felt like a sore spot on the back of my sack, and I should think about that. I should investigate that, you know. But I didn't. And it's one of those things where it was a lesson in how bad should you let things get. And I think I let it go for a week, and part of my ball sack started to get hard and swell up, and I had a fever, and I was getting dizzy and shit, and I was still like, I'll be fine. And then one night I got up in the middle of the night to take a piss, and I kind of stood up too fast, and I didn't wake up on the floor, I guess, but I kind of did, because I woke up on the floor, you know, like I did lose consciousness or something. You know, so that morning I made grandma take me to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 8 days, real bad staph infection. You know, the hospital treated me as a homeless person. I was indigent health is what, you know what I mean? So
really? Because just no insurance, no whatever.
I had no insurance. I had no income. I had a bank account that had $300 in it. So the hospital they considered me an indigent. You know what I mean?
What's the payment plan on indigent care?
Well, so most of it is handled by the county, and then the rest of it they just bill you with, and then they sell off the debt to debt collectors, who then sell off the debt to other debt collectors. That's one of the things that's interesting about the healthcare system, is like the hospital gives me a bill that I can't pay, but then a debt collector pays a portion of that bill for the right to try and collect on it. So the hospital does get some money in this system. And then the bill collector tries to collect the money from me. Eventually, when I'm never going to pay it, they sell that debt to another bill collector who then comes after me. And so I've seen it, I think the total bill, I got 2 total bills. They were like $65,000 and $68,000. I was 27 years old. I've done nothing. I had nothing. But they treated me like a homeless person. Most of it they never pursued or anything. There was a few like weird doctors association fees that kept showing up. There was one that over the years has gone from give us $3,000 to we'll take 200 and never speak of this again. But well past 7 years, my credit is reset and everything. So I just I don't ever. But that happened. So that happened 5-ish years into comedy.
It was a significant event.
Yeah, and it really makes you feel like you're a piece of shit who's done nothing with your life and can't take care of yourself. Because it's one thing when you're a young person who's going, yeah, fuck it, I'm taking a big gamble, I'm taking a big risk on this, but I'll be fine. I'm young and strong and all that sort of shit. And then something like that happens, and you go, oh, I can't take care of myself. I have no ability to actually take care of myself, So that affected me pretty strongly. But also that was mostly just tied in with the moroseness about, oh God, you worry about death and dying and all that shit kind of hits home. That sort of thing happens.
Right. Put it in perspective.
And then, yeah. And then it was only a few days, I feel like, after, but it was probably a week or two after I got out of the hospital, my mom died. And she had it was a real weird thing where she had broken her heel, and then when she was in the hospital, she died. And it was one of the.
It's like a malpractice thing, right?
Yeah, it kind of was, but we couldn't get a malpractice case because her health wasn't strong enough. It was one of those things where it would have been difficult to convince a jury, whoever needs to be convinced. I don't know. The point is, she was a 300-pound lady with COPD. And it's like, yeah, but she broke her foot and then she died in the hospital. It's fucking crazy, But it's like, well, nobody would take the case, sort of thing, because they felt like it wasn't winnable, Right. So, so then when that happens, all of a sudden now I've got the house too, where because we have the house I grew up in is here in Cocoa Beach, and my brother still lives with me. He was living with my mom at the time. My Aunt Carol and my grandmother were living across the 2 blocks from me here. So here in Cocoa. So all of a sudden, I've just gotten out of the hospital. I've got all this. I have no life. I have nothing. I've done nothing with myself. All that sort of shit. And I've just made peace with that now. I don't want anybody to think I've become ambitious. But
and nothing is debatable, of course, because the sum experience of everything you've done and it makes you who you are, and maybe you don't have a couple of things to write on a resume, but you've lived some fucking life.
That's true, and
I feel you. On paper, you got nothing.
Yeah, and it's just I think too, it was just the first glimpse of mortality, and then my mom died right after that. This is sort of a 1-2 where it was just like, why am I pretending? But then at the same time, all of a sudden now there's this house that I've got to take care of and all this sort of shit. And
brother, and
and let's be honest here. There is a what are you doing comedy for? And it's like, well, I want to, the personal satisfaction of it or whatever. But then you want to have a job that you don't hate, and you want to make enough money to have a nice place. I inherited a house in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I mean, it's a shithole. It's a total pig house. I live like an animal. You know what I mean? I have more of a cave than a house, but I have cordoned off personal space now that belongs to me, which is basically one of the primary reasons that you struggle right in life. So I don't need to worry about that. And that was a major component too, where I was sitting here going, I can spend my whole life trying to dig out an existence for myself where I can have something like this, or I can just have this,
Right.
And
you have shelter.
Yeah, and it's my property legally,
Right.
Yeah. And it's like I don't have a college degree. I was rapidly approaching 30, And it's like, here's an asset that's worth a lot of money that you know, everybody in the world is going to expect. You're just going to sell this house and go piss the money away. But I don't have any college. I have an AA degree. I was in the middle of, I was at the beginning of trying to get another degree when all this shit goes down. So I just dropped out of school. You know, so now I have this, theoretically, I have this asset. I have this piece of land. It's like, I just need to hold on to this because this probably more than anything is a thing that I can count on when I'm getting older, you know, now that death and dying is very real.
Salient. Yeah.
So I've been, I got a job. The first job I could get back was we had a thing
Ron
here.
John, baby, right?
Well, that's technically not true. There was a pay what you want taxi cab service here in Cocoa Beach, where you rented a cab from this guy for $50, and then you would drive around picking up crackheads and old ladies and strippers and shit and taking them to where they needed to go, and it was pay what you want. So you had to, I mean, it was crazy. I only did it for like 3 days, and I was like, there's no way I can ever make money. This is insane.
You really are a Doug Stanhope hack, all right? I'm sorry. You got trying to get material by driving around the strippy crackheads and that stuff.
That's just the energy that I'd put out in the universe. I attracted those people to me, right? That's the law of attraction. But no, that's true.
But yeah, that was not viable.
It was not viable, and it was not the sort of, I mean, you just realize. So anyway, instead of picking up people, I took the cab to go put in applications and shit. And that was the one I got was Ron John. So I was at Ron John Surf Shop in Cocoa Beach working in the warehouse for 2 years. I folded fucking T-shirts for 8 hours a day from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that was the first thing that, so I could get some kind of work on my resume. Because other than that, you have like a 7-year black hole in your
stand-up does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do during these points? Were you an illegal operative, a secret agent?
Right. And for me,
what
people
horrible
look at me,
thing was it?
Yeah. For me, it's people think drug dealer or people think prison time. You know what I mean?
Drug user. Right. Exactly.
Well, certainly. Yeah.
So you worked for Ronald and Johnson.
There is no John. There's only Ron.
What?
There is no John.
What a conspiracy.
Yep. That's right. I did that for two. I mean, I'm not, mostly it was stickers on flip-flops, if I'm being completely honest. I kind of made myself the flip-flop and skateboard guy and that sort of shit. But yeah, 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. I drove to the Ron John Surf Shop warehouse, get as stoned as possible. I was going out to my car every break, lunchtime. I'm sure I reeked of weed. Nobody cared. Nobody ever said anything. So I was just putting stickers on shoes, And I did that for 2 years.
Right, because you were always, I mean, you did kind of represent that comedian who was just hustling without a job for a long time with me. I was always working as a waiter, and, you got mixed feelings no matter if you're working or not working about the other side,
Sure, and
could I be more successful if I had devoted more time to this? Could I make that money if I didn't spend it working as a waiter, whatever.
And you call me hustling all you want. I lived with my grandma for free, Towards the end of the year, I was maybe making $150 a week tops, doing real. I had a $500 month. I had a $500 week. I don't remember how often I made a lot of money, but I could usually count on $150 maybe a week, bag of weed, tank of gas,
Right.
And I could have probably worked. I don't know. I just kind of never did.
Yeah. There wasn't a voice nagging like, maybe I should apply to Subway today. I was like, no, I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to eventually be noticed for my prize-winning humor, and I will be vaulted to success and money.
Yeah, and that was part of it. Is because I killed a lot. I was getting a lot of. I was very successful.
I mean, there's comedians who I feel fine about saying I was in the top half of every show I was in, but I wasn't necessarily always the person who brought the house down and was the one people talk about outside immediately. But you were. More often than not, you were that person.
It definitely happened a lot. And it's I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Which can lead to a harder fall, maybe. Who knows? I mean,
well, there is a lot of pressure. So especially at small, you do a small open mic. Some bar show, right? I did a bar show one time where I did like an hour, and of course, why are you doing an hour? But I was like the last guy, the headline, the open mic headline spot, and I did like an hour, and they had a wireless mic, and I went around and talked to every person in the room. It's that sort of shit that can only happen that moment, And it's one of the best, people went nuts for it. People really had a great time for an hour. And then immediately it's like, hey man, you coming back next week? And it's like, oh, fuck.
It's like, no, I hoped I would just have burned this place to the ground after that amazing performance and do it again somewhere else tomorrow.
Yeah. And then you're going to come back and I'm not, it's certainly the jokes you're going to know already. And what am I going to do? Just talk to everybody again? Is it going to happen the same way? None of that shit's going to, there's a weight of expectation that you can kind of wither underneath, because I would rather people just have the one good set in their mind than, oh, you remember that one time when that was great? I wish we,
legendary set that you can never repeat.
Yeah. And then and to even show up and try again, because there is the part of you that understands too, that was kind of a weird special moment that happened because the whole group kind of agreed to let it happen. It wasn't just me, Right.
I wonder if there's a certain class of comedian that just can never recreate those results in the way that you're supposed to when you film a special or when you get to that certain benchmark. That randomness, that improvisation, the spontaneity, all that kind of stuff. There must be thousands of comedians who thrive in that, but then, when you change that, it's different.
As soon as we're all going to sit in a nice little room and we're wearing a collared shirt because we went out tonight, and there is something about that changes, And that's the same thing, but putting me in front of those people, that's exactly it. Like you see, the regular people who dress up and want to look nice because they're going out and are trying to enjoy themselves by going to, one of those adult playground sort of places like the Seminole Casino was, where that improv. And then who's going to be your entertainment for tonight? And I'm this unwashed heavy metal guy who wants to shout at them about his penis. I can kind of understand that, like the bridge is too the uncanny valley. That's not really a malapropism, but
perfect analogy. That's right. Yeah. Well, here's a question then. What do you think if you had not been in Hollywood, Florida, but you happened to be in Austin, Texas, or Seattle, or some kooky place like that, where the clubs may have fucking loved your crazy bar shit as is? Do you ever think of stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think
Florida kind of sucks. That's kind of an anomaly here, is the Florida factor.
It's weird. It's a cultural black hole. There's little pinpricks of light, but for the most part, it's a place where people go to drink outside,
Right. And many kinds of people. A lot of people say that the diversity factor, I mean, it can enrich comedy in awesome ways, but there's no real stand-up scene,
That's interesting.
Cohesion.
Yeah. And in the crowd that shows up too, there's not necessarily any one culture we can all relate to.
I think some of the crowd work in Miami was fantastic because there were so many different people to play off of. And,
yes, definitely.
The racial comedy in Florida, I think, was accepted at a level that if you took it to other places in the country, you'd get booed off stage or you'd be accused of not being woke. But there's
I experienced that personally.
A certain lack of, did you?
Yeah, the difference in doing the kind of jokes and talking about the kind of shit I would talk about in South Florida and versus just going to Orlando. And Orlando, it's all of a sudden Central Florida and predominantly white. So all of a sudden what I'm saying is my true feelings that comes from a place of hate. It's just the way, it's just the...
Right. You're like, no, I have a Colombian friend. Like, we talked about fun things. No, you're talking,
Right, exactly.
You're talking about Muslims.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I mean, I'm not going to be the guy that complains about that sort of shit either. Whatever,
Right.
But
just analyzing in the post game.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, but I do. It would have been good. I probably would have been a comedian longer if I had moved somewhere for two reasons. One, I would have probably had to work if I had moved, and that would have established a life where I took care of myself. You know what I mean? Where I actually had to. That sort of thing. And then on top of that, I do think getting me in another environment probably would have stretched, at least if not out and out, success and all that. It would have probably stretched it out a little bit longer and put me in a different position,
Mm-hmm. Were you ever thinking of moving?
Yeah. It was always a thing I was kind of afraid of, I think.
Like when Mike Lawrence did it and you were like, whoa, this guy's newer than me, but he
wasn't newer than me. No. But I was still really new.
But you were both green.
we were both, pretty, I don't know how long he'd been doing it, but not much. He'd been doing it like a year longer than something like that. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
From what I understood, he moved pretty early in the career,
Yeah.
where I knew people who did that and moved to LA and New York. And I'm like, really? You think you're ready to go? I don't think I'm ready to go. How do you think you're ready to go? But
right.
going there makes you ready faster sometimes.
That's, I think, part of it. Yeah.
Or it'll destroy you faster. Right.
Or that. Yeah. But then you're destroyed in the capital of the world or wherever you've moved, and you could build your new life there. I don't know.
Yeah. If you didn't do comedy, do you think you would have found your way to it? Or what do you think would have happened to you if you didn't find stand-up?
That's a hard one. I could see myself trying all kinds of ways. If I had focused on music more, I would have probably wound up in a few bands or something when I was young. I think that sort of thing, maybe. I'm a song and dance man a little bit, and it's a thing I'm embarrassed about, where I have the urge to perform for people a little bit. It's a difficult thing. I find myself doing it. You get embarrassed by it. You know what I mean? When you realize when you're talking to a stranger and you're turning it on a little bit, what the fuck are you doing? So, I might have just been a really, really annoying person that you run into, the kind of guy who scoots next to you at the bar and pretends he's not,
Right. The funny guy at the office.
Yeah. That sort of, yeah.
You'd be slapping all the sandal stickers on your face and like, oh, I'm a pair of sandals.
Look at me.
There would be a hole that you needed to fill, though.
There probably was. And it's not like, I think that is a big, I think because I, I got a lot of approval out of doing comedy, even at the level that I did. And I think that developmentally, even though we're talking about a man who was in his late 20s, I think developmentally I needed that a little bit. And once I got it, and you realize, okay, so this level of approval, this level of appreciation doesn't really, that's not tied to anything else in comedy. You know what I mean? So I kind of like satisfied that hunger, so to speak. And I realized that once you can have that and you can kind of love yourself a little bit, you know what, God damn it, I was good at that. Say what you want. I did that, then you don't necessarily need it all the time. And, I don't know, like I said, I'm a weird introverted guy. So it's like, it's really nice to know that I did do that and that I had that, and I feel like that has gifted me when I'm in conversation with people, when I'm interacting with people at work or out in the world. I have a level of comfort and skill with conversation that I can kind of click on and click off when I need it. And that's been really great. That's been a really helpful thing. But at the same time, I don't necessarily feel the urge to just get out there, man, and get up on the stage and tell the fucking truth or whatever kind of shit people used to say,
Right.
Because it's like, I got a lot of laughs. I know I can get laughs. I probably can't get much money. I'm not particularly interested in sex. What is there in comedy then?
Damn, when you break it down like that. Yeah.
I got to take a piss real bad. We can do it on mic if you don't mind. I don't care. But I just want to alert you instead of trying to get away with it in the background.
It's fine. We could take a minute to get another beer and refresh our biologicals.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Did you have an enjoyable passing of liquids?
Yes. My stream was mighty.
Because we put balls over. That's it. I don't know who these guys are out there living their whole lives just pulling their wang out and then having this like conflicting feeling underneath the wang where the stream is getting pierced by this elastic band.
That's right. That's right. And then at the same time, some guys I know try to go dick out, but they undo the zipper and just pull their dick out of their underwear. But I'm not trying to solve a puzzle here,
Yeah, that's. I think that's the greatest generation who kept the belt on, did the fly, navigated out of the hole, and then reset the hole.
I can never do that under pressure. I'm always just kind of feeling around because you don't just have to open the hole. You have to open the hole and unroot your dick out from your, it's stuck to your leg because you're fucking gross and sweaty and fat, It's just a disaster. Just undo everything over the top.
It's not just gross, sweaty, fat dicks, my friend. You still got it in your head. If only Fat Girl could know the lack of offense you meant.
Yeah, no, it's one of the, it's a shameful thing. I realized maybe the mistake I made was trying to have like an avuncular energy with her about something like that. Because I was immediately trying to be like, come on, let me show you how it's done, kid. You know? I've been shaming my body for years.
Right. And you know what it is? It's kind of when you're at home in a scene and you have your friends and you have those relationships, there's a certain, I don't know if it's a safety net, but there's a comfort in knowing that kind of all your stuff is going to land the way that you intended it to, because there's people in the room who know you well enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas a couple of years out of the scene, man, boy, you get forgotten real quick, and people come along and new comics, and all of a sudden, oh, you do comedy? Did you do they think you're 2 months in, you know, and
right.
And they don't blame them.
No, not at all. And I definitely get that again because I look like such a strange person. Not even strange, whatever. I'm just not your typical.
Yeah.
You know, for someone who was arguably like, what would you call? I was, you know, a bar comic or
like
whatever.
A metal Viking, berserker warrior.
Right, but then try to use big words and also be drunk and shout at people. You know, that was sort of
the kind of the metalhead who would reference the Teapot Dome scandal.
Right. Yes, absolutely. That's funny that's what sticks with you.
Yeah, little things pop out. That's funny. Don't push the red button. A couple things.
Oh yeah, of course, that one. That's an all-time classic.
Yeah,
classics. I think of that every morning before I get in the shower.
Well, here's a question that you can feel free to answer as little or as long as you want, but a lot of your material did come from at least a perceived or played uncomfortableness with your body. I'm sensing that you haven't come too far on that, but I'm wondering if you have it all and how you feel about that as one of your main comedic themes.
Yeah. You come to realize as you get old, like I've always never been comfortable with my body, never been comfortable with myself that way. And you come to realize as you're older that that's sort of generalized it's something like anxiety, it's something like depression, things like that. And then it's the certain things about you that you pick to have them play out, you know, for whatever reason. I've just always I was always a fat little kid. I was a fat big kid, rather. I was tall and pudgy, had a, you know, big gut and everything.
But you never saw yourself as like a big, strong kid. You saw yourself as a big, fat kid.
Yeah, it's the big, strong kid thing. That's only good for a few seconds when you're lifting something or getting in a fight or something. And then otherwise, the rest of the time, you know, your ass crack's hanging out and your tits touch your belly. You know what I mean? When you sit down. I don't know, man. It's weird. I'm a lot more comfortable with myself now, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I'm realistic. I don't find my.
The power just went out because of COVID, I guess. So I'm calling Matt back on the phone. Sorry if the recording quality is inferior. Hello. There he is. This should be okay. The recording quality shouldn't be too much worse. But I like
want to rob people.
I like that.
Of the magic.
That's right. I want to hear those dulcet tones you got.
That's right. Golden Pipes, baby, coming at you live, Central Florida, Cocoa Beach.
Checking with traffic and weather. Now, I like that COVID knocked the power out right as I was asking you about your personal, deep felt feelings of body dysmorphia, and then it's like, nah, this is bullshit. Click, and then you went on talking for what could have been minutes to nobody. Exposing deep personal truths that probably no one will ever hear now.
Yeah, well, no, I mean that was kind of my act, though. I'm pretty open about the kind of weirdo that I am, you know. I've always felt like I was fat when I was a kid. I'm fat now, but like not like I'm mostly people shaped, but I'm very soft in the middle. You know what I mean? I'm very unimpressive without my clothes on, sort of thing. And that's always been a thing that you know, you just notice. And if you have any kind of anxiety or depression, it's a corner for you to. It's a little, you know, thing for a fingernail to get under and pick at. You know.
And you know, I would always counter, and I still feel like it. Like someone out there wants what you are, like big time. Like there are ladies out there who like a man with a big belly and big body who can like throw it down on them Viking style. And I feel like, I know it's, because I feel the same thing, that I'm a skinny little piece of crap that no woman would want me for the same but opposite reasons, But yet I've come to realize over time that like, no, some chicks like this and some people like that and some people boo. But
Sure.
But fundamentally, you still feel that like, because you got a crease here or a crack there, that you're not worthy of love.
No, I don't think so at all. I just think that's like I was saying, if you have any kind of anxiety or depression, that's just a thing for episodes, when you get underneath there, and then just when you have that in your head, and then you're, especially comedy, the way I was doing it, that's the kind of thing I'm going to talk about.
A chorus.
It's sort of, you bring your lowest moments, but on top of that, you knew me for fucking 5 or 6 years. I was one of the, like we were saying, I was a very successful comedian in the comedian social scene sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. It would have been really easy to bang other comics. It's just not a sort of thing that I just don't really have the urge. It's just not a thing I just don't feel like it's missing from my life.
Right.
That's a blessing. Especially the older I get, man, but it's one of those things where it's like I've been in a handful of romantic relationships in my life. They last for a couple weeks. You really kind of realize I don't have what this person wants, and I don't want what this person has. And it's kind of unfair to do to people, to trap people up in these weird bad relationships and make them work, when fundamentally I'm just kind of happier by myself.
Well, do you think there's a person out there that would fit better?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not completely closed to the idea, but I'm not. It's not a thing. You know what I mean?
Right. It's not something you hang your hat on every day.
Person. I don't think of myself. All that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it too. So then for the whole melange of what makes the whole body dysmorphia a strange thing. You know what I mean?
Spice melange.
So it's there's a few of those key elements that I have. And when you have those, it just makes that sort of self-loathing comedy really easy, because I'm sort of detached from myself as a sexual being. You know what I mean? So like, when I make fun of my body for being obviously, it's because I don't look like the kind of dudes that I presume chicks want to fuck. But it's mostly just like when you take off your clothes, you get in the shower or whatever, and you see your reflection in the mirror for 5 seconds every day, and you just go, ugh. I can be honest about that. Why not? That's a real feeling that I have, and because I'm not actually so burdened by the fact that I'm single, and I'm not actually so burdened by the fact that I feel like I'm not good at romance and sex and stuff. I can be honest about something that is a real hang up for other people. And for me, it's just like a thing I can play with a little bit, and be honest and be open about, because I do feel that way. But at the same time, it's not a huge hang up for me. The way I'm sure there's people the way they feel about their body really is a big thing that ruins their life. Just the way they feel about that sort of stuff, and the way it changes the way they interact with the world. Whereas for me, it's more just like a background. I presume I'm flirting with no one, and I try to interact with the world as much like a cousin as possible. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Right. So, in a way, you're making other people who have the same root fears feel more comfortable about the things they're afraid of, because you can go there in a more comfortable way. Yet, you don't seem to be alleviating your own fears about how silly that stuff is. Or you kind of do, because you're so detached that it's not something you're concerned about, or it's something you've internalized to the point where it doesn't concern you anymore.
Yeah, I've kind of, you accept who you are as a person, right? There's a lot of different kinds of body dysmorphia people, and I'm not a food and exercise, I'm not a diet and exercise type. That's, you're kind of lucky if you get that one. I'm sure that's a rude thing to say, but you're kind of lucky if you get that one. And then, I'm more of a just, like I said, in the background, I I'm not interacting with humanity on a certain level, just because of the way I feel about myself.
Right. A certain hermit on the hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That said, yeah, I'm kind of lucky in that I'm really not I'm not the horniest guy. I'm not the loneliest guy. So I'm really lucky in that regard because it doesn't impact my life that way. And that's why I feel like I can be honest about it. I think most people, most people have a degree of body shame. That's like a normal thing to have. Mm. And then when you, as an intelligent person, you try to be or whatever. So it's like me, the whole pinch and inch thing where it's like I can grab several handfuls and flap them at you. You know what I mean? So like there's an objective truth to it too. That's not just like the optimistic, positive power thinking. Mm-hmm. And so if I can live in those worlds, it's a way you can sort of sublimate those feelings without having to dwell on them. And I do think it really helped me, to be honest with you, because you really can make peace with who you are and how you feel about yourself when you shout it at strangers night after night.
Damn.
Even if I'm not the most, even if a motivational speaker wouldn't necessarily be happy with the way I view the world, I could argue with him very well about the way I view the world, and for the most part, it's a thing that I've been able to. It's not sublimate, right? Humor is one of the adult ways of dealing with trauma, right? There's only like 2 or 3 psychologically recognized. There's like humor, sublimation, and I don't know what the other one is right
Pain,
now. You know what I mean?
Right, crying, shit.
Yeah, that might be it, something like that. But so I really think that's one. I sort of know who I am as a person and how I want to move through the world. And part of what really helped me was that sort of thing, shouting my insecurities and weaknesses at strangers to the point where now I take them as given. I don't dwell on them. I don't feel weird about them. I don't, it's just I'm this guy.
Right.
And that's fine.
So it's a form of self-acceptance in a way.
I think definitely a lot of the stuff I used to. I mean, I did I did material about liking big dick porn, which again, that's like a thing where I was like, I would never say this to another person, and now it's like, well, instead I'm going to shout it at
a group
tens of people every night for years on end, and then you come out of it on the other side going, yeah, you don't have a dick that's that big, but you don't have a dick you have a normal dick. Most people have normal dicks. That's why people like monster cock porn. It's okay.
Right. You like going to see a blockbuster superhero movie. Right.
Right, and you can have the fun of the fetish type thing and also operate in the real world understanding that the people around you don't have giant dicks and you don't, and you haven't been slighted and all that sort of shit,
Right. So it definitely sounds like in the end it was a healthy coping mechanism, even if the process itself was not easy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it really helped me grow emotionally. I think it really helped me become a more confident person. I think, I like one of those, I can hang in conversation and win arguments with people that are not prepared for that sort of shit at all.
Yeah, I bet. Do people see you?
Insult me.
Mm-hmm. People see you and think you're going to be a certain type of person, and then they're amazed with like how eloquent and loquacious you are.
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm not just immediately saying what they thought I was going to say based on their prepared, and I'm not decrying that sort of thing either, of course. I live in the world. You have to make, the trick is it's okay to judge people. You just have to be willing to update that judgment. You know what I mean? You just have to always be willing to judge again. So, of course, functionally, you're going to judge. When you're walking around, you make judgments about things and people. It's just as long as the file is still open and you can double-click it again, then you'll be okay. You're not a huge asshole. You know what I mean?
That is an amazing way to put it, right? Right, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to judge you. It's like, no, it's natural to judge something. Is it good, bad, evil, pure, whatever? But being open to always revise that judgment is huge.
Yeah.
In that same respect, do you ever think that maybe you learned the wrong lessons about yourself, or maybe you learned something that's only half truth, or you learned the wrong thing about yourself?
I mean, I should have just gone to fucking college, man. You know what I mean? I'm bright enough. If I could have just put up with doing homework and paying attention and the hierarchy of the classroom, that sort of shit, I'd be fine right now.
I mean, you went for 2 years though, right? You didn't.
Yeah.
It.
I just don't like it. I just don't like it. And but part of that definitely, especially going back to when I was a kid, I hated school. Of course, I just hate fucking school. There's no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like it. But then as an adult, it's even harder. Not only are you now I'm a 27-year-old man sitting in a room full of 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and then I've developed a personality type from stand-up and from interacting in the world that way that makes it very difficult to participate in a real way in those kind of situations. You kind of you're always a bit detached, from those kind of things where anything that feels like hoop jumping, you just kind of detach from, and you don't interact with in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely did. It's one of those things. And if I had just when I was a kid been able to just eat, I was bright enough, I look around at the world, I look at myself, I was bright enough to get some kind of middling degree that would have put me in some kind of middling position in my life very, very easily. And that's a message that my parents tried to communicate to me, and I just couldn't understand because you don't have that kind of wisdom.
Right. I mean, and it sounds shitty at that point. I mean, right? It's like they're telling you to aspire to something safe and stable. And you're like, no, a million people have done that. I want to do something different and make a splash.
Mm-hmm.
But
and also have fun. That's the part of life that people discount as not being important, right? You're supposed to put off fun until you're about to die. And then when you know for a fact you're about to die, that's when you can spend some money and go on little trips and eat at nice restaurants.
right. Have a little bucket list in your wheelchair, go to Disney and Paris.
Yeah. It's safe to have fun now because soon you'll be dead. You don't have to worry. Everybody else needs to be working and saving and stuff,
Yeah, I wonder if our generation being less a part of the investing and like being able to actually make a living, if the lack of that has led to us emphasizing fun more, or if that was just the natural progression of kind of, the more secure your parents are, then the children can be artists, that kind of a thing,
Right. It's probably it's probably all those things that have created this wave of people like that. But our generation seems to appreciate experiences and things more than material. I'm still a degenerate collector of weird things, but for the most part, more interested in experiences and socializing than most other aspects of life.
Right. Yeah. We've also been consumer cultured to death to the point where, that's how a lot of us only express ourselves through whether we like or dislike various pieces of pop culture.
Yeah, that's really true. That's one of those things. As a heavy metal guy, people really struggle with, part of the fun of being a heavy metal guy is hating stuff. That doesn't mean I hate you. So when I don't like the band you like, or I don't like the thing you like, I'm not rejecting you as a person. I'm just being a fun, cranky old man, and that's. I've noticed that when I interact with people, and I try to interact with people on that level, where I'm being honest and also, having fun with who I am as a person. Do you like this? No, I fucking hate that. It's garbage. Yada yada. You go on and on about it. Part of the fun of my identity is finding a way to, it's okay that I hate stuff, and it's okay that I don't like the stuff that people think you're supposed to like, and in fact, you can really take a lot of glee and, that sort of thing. But socially, when we're in, especially because, like you're saying, we all wear brands and we all wear labels. So do you like this sort of thing? If you do, you're probably the sort of person who likes me. You don't like this thing, you probably don't like me. Or is he saying he doesn't like this thing because it is me that is suggesting it, and all that sort of shit that goes on. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So for the most part, you find yourself doing one of two things: having a conversation like this before you talk about stuff with people, or you just kind of go, yeah, that's fine, or no, I haven't seen that. And then what do you like? I like concrete wins,
Well, here's a question. Are you still a comedian?
I do think of myself as a comedian.
Are you a stand-up comedian?
I definitely do. That's what I was, so that's what makes me a comedian.
Right.
I guess
The stand-up.
Technically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that way. It's weird. I never, even though I mean, here's where I launch into the, oh God, I'm going to hate myself if I ever hear this back. But yeah, like I disconnected from doing stand-up, but you know, I still listen to comedy podcasts, man. I still hear what people are talking about. But that, you know, that is kind of true. And I love comedy history. When I was a kid, I came out of, you know, I had Saturday Night Live tapes, and when we were, God, it was, you know, there was The Daily Show, and after that was Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, and there was one magical summer where it was Saturday Night Live reruns. It was Conan O'Brien, then Saturday Night Live, then they played old SCTV. I mean, you know, I come from the Petri dish in a weird way. It is an elemental part of who I am. I feel like I've shared in those experiences. I know joke structure. I understand timing. You know, whatever. As much as a guy who fucking folded T-shirts for 2 years after he quit comedy can. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do. You know, in the way that as a life experience and as the way it shapes you as a person. Maybe the way once someone's been to war. Or once someone's been, I don't know, something like that, where it's
an
like
often used analogy.
Experience that changes who you are, you know? But yeah, I definitely do. I do still think of myself as a comedian, at least in the sense of when I'm reading an article or watching a show about comedy, I can understand it a little deeper than a normal person, you know? Shit like that, if I allow myself the dalliance, you know?
Well, let me pause for these emergency vehicles. There's some 18 fire trucks going by my place, which
probably why the power went out, do you think?
Yeah, I can see the traffic light is out, so some shit went down. It's happening, Matt.
I'm an agent of chaos.
Grab your dried wolf meat and meet me in the bunker.
That's right. Oh, I have a jug of water and a jug of piss, and eventually one will become the other, brother.
You just switch them off. Okay. Perpetual energy. That's nice.
That's right.
It's weird. How do you think these other comedians are dealing with Corona? It's such a weird thing. I think a lot of comedians are going to kind of be forced into quitting faster than they would have normally.
Definitely.
And I guess the other comedians are just going apeshit crazy right now. I mean, if I had to stop doing comedy back then when we were cracking along in the thousands, it would have, I would be trying to do comedy on these online web open mics and all these terribly, some are fine. Some of the online stand-up is cool, but good Lord, a lot of it is not.
I'm sure it's not. It definitely seems the podcast is the way to go, or something like that for right now, if you want to do comedy. And it's different. It's not stand-up.
Right.
But
same muscles, muscle groups.
It's got to be weird. You think about the guys who were just making it, and that's who I feel the worst for, you know? The guys who were just road features, or who were just starting to be able to headline themselves, and were just starting to tour, and all that sort of shit. And now this shit is over, and it's, you know, fuck.
At least for now. I mean,
yeah, it's coming back, but it's going to be a while.
It is, yeah. Well, we'll see, and hopefully they can all get back to doing comedy, so this podcast actually stands out amongst all the 70,000 podcasts released from you comedians twiddling your thumbs.
You know, you have the people who did comedy a few times and hated it, or didn't do well, or whatever, and then you have the people like me who did it for years, and then you have the people who just do it for a few months and kind of come and go. We knew those people too in South Florida. You know, there was
hobbyists.
There was this sort of pool of people. There was the people you would see kind of once or twice a year. Then there was people you'd see every few weeks. And then there's the people you'd see every night.
Right.
But they still kind of file in and out. You know. Yeah,
it is a bus where people get up, people get off, and someone else takes the seat. Like it gets.
Yeah.
It keeps moving. The interesting thing, like, hobbyists is something that when you start doing comedy and you really get obsessed with it, you look down on the hobbyists because, they're not committing to comedy 100% like me. But now with this perspective, I see that hobbyists might love comedy, I'm not going to say more, but as much as a hardcore comedian because they're doing it because they fucking love it, because they want to do it,
Right.
not because they want to get a career, not because they're trying to impress people and work their way up the ladder and reshape the game and be one of the greats. They just want to be funny and make people laugh. And even though they're a shitty dentist most of the time or they have some day job, like, I appreciate it in a way that I never did when I was back there.
Yeah. That's really great. You're right about that. I can see a lot of that. That makes a lot of sense. And it's just like, you know, like with anything else, people doing it for the love of doing it are probably closer to why they should be doing it. You know, It's the same with bands and shit.
But even if taking them closer to why they love doing it takes them further from being successful at it.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. You know, that's definitely a possibility because I don't even know. I haven't been doing. It's been like 7 years since I've really been doing comedy, so I presume it's roughly the same. And I presume that, you know, medium energy guy in a button-down shirt is still what everybody's supposed to be, and you're supposed to be, you know, a little bit edgy. Not edgy is not the word. You're supposed to make soccer moms kind of guffaw, you know, and that's about as far as you push it. God,
You
what
know,
an asshole I am.
I would say it's like half that, but the other half is definitely the more woke school of comedy. Our society in general has gotten more woke and sensitive to terms and ideologies and identities and stuff. And I think a lot of comedy, you know, one of the biggest criticisms of comedy these days is that it's too worried about being right than being funny.
Yeah.
Taking a stand. You know, I think we're almost getting to the point where we're getting over that. Like, it's already hit its peak a few years ago. But it's definitely still one of the... and just in a weird way, like, I was going to make a video game about stand-up comedy years ago. With like a bad RPG Maker thing. And when I still want to make it. But when I think about it now versus years ago, there's a huge veil of like identity and wokeness and representation that I would have to write into the game that I totally just was not thinking about earlier. I definitely thought diversity is important. Of course, diversity. But as far as the storytelling and the identity and the just kind of unrepeatable jokes because they're so personal.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe your game should be called White Male Comedian, and then maybe that's okay.
That's exactly. I was gonna like start it like that and be like, statistics said that you're a white male. That's not how it always is, but for the sake of game simplicity and that I can't write a different narrative for each different race, we're gonna keep it simple. But yeah, it's a big. I see it as kind of messy that way.
Yeah, I can understand. That's one of those things that would be very difficult. That's the thing I've thought about too, because I was a filthy comedian, and for the most part, I didn't do. I would probably get in a little bit of trouble. I don't know what kind of trouble an open mic bar comedian could get, but I'm sure there would have been public disputes or something with somebody because of the kind of stuff I would talk about. You know.
Right. If we
I
transplant
definitely had
like
that sort of thing.
your act from back then to right now in a bar, right? Would it fly over the same way?
Right.
I mean, probably not, but also you would have adjusted it living in the real world.
Yeah, that, of course that's the case. You know, as much as you want to, that's the point too. Is like as much as comedy is this sort of, the people want it to be an ideological razor like that, but the point is to make people laugh. If you're not doing that, you're not doing comedy. You're doing some other kind of public speaking, which is fine. There's like a whole tradition of that goes back to ancient Greece, right? But stand-up philosophy and all that sort of shit, you know, with fucking and what is it? Doesn't matter. Mel Brooks, right? But fucking,
Mel Brooks always matters. Mel Brooks is a living legend.
Yeah, a still living legend.
For a couple
just like
more
my grandma.
months. Yeah, knock knock. Yeah, we're gonna hook them up. That's right. She can be the new Anne Bancroft.
That's definitely the case. I do think you're kind of that's another thing I struggled with when it comes to continuing to do stand up, where it's like it's hard to express an idea like I don't necessarily want to entertain everyone. You know, then again, well, what kind of pretentious or weird or hateful asshole are you? But I don't want to entertain everyone, and I don't know that I could do that. I don't know that I could build an act I don't know that I'm capable of it, and the compromises I would have to make to try. Now that's a level of work and effort where it's like I might as well be wearing a collar and making cold calls to people and doing all this kind of shit that I never wanted to do, you know?
Damn. Yeah.
And there's a certain level to it where it's no longer, you know, living your dream and following or any of that stuff. It turns into a thing that you flatly don't like and don't want to do. And then at that point, it's like, well, I can do, if I have to do that, why wouldn't I do something I don't really care about, you know? And then you just get a normal job and live that life. That's kind of one of the other things, you know, when I think about it, you know? It's like in a lot of ways, it's the same amount of compromise and bullshit, but I don't care about my stupid job, you know?
Dude, I think you just hit to the heart of the podcast. Where is the line between not being able to hack it and not being able to do what it takes to reach the top, and not wanting to do this shit and realizing what it takes to be to the quote-unquote top and deciding, I don't want this shit. This would ruin it for me. I hate this.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, it's easy to, you know, sour grapes and all that sort of thing, and that's probably partially true. But, I mean, it's definitely the case that I'm not the kind of person who wants to, I don't like most people, you know, and I'm not because of any specific demographic reason, you know, anybody might, because it's hard to express these ideas now. But, you know, I don't like most people. I don't want to interact with most people. Most people are not fun. And then you know so you're stepping from, you're out from, hey, we're in a bar, we're all getting drunk, we're all kind of trying to have fun. And then comedy, there is an element of like intellectual battlefield. That's a thing that I never kind of liked about it either. When you get into the clubs, there is sort of is a violence to it. There is the sort of people who show up not wanting to laugh or wanting to. Laughter is not approval. That's one of the old things I used to say. You know, laughter is supposed to be an involuntary response to something that you recognize. It is not saying I approve of you and what you said. You know, and it's kind of a gray area. I can understand, but that's the point. You know, there's an element of that when you get to the club level of comedy, I notice for sure, where it's like laughter becomes approval at that point. And then I don't want to be the king of the party. You know, there's this thing that happens, right, where so you're on stage and you're killing for however long you're on for, 5-10 minutes, let's be honest, right? And then you get off, and then people want to come up and talk to you, but really they want to continue that energy. They want to continue that we're hanging out and he's the king of my party. And it's like, I'm done. That's that. We did that, you know?
Right, I'm just me now. I'm a human like you.
I'm a human like you. You saw me do that, and now, you know, I don't, I mean, I will be funny if you talk to me probably, but I'm also going to be quiet and drink and silly and or whatever, all these other things that I'm going to be. And I'm probably not comfortable with just hanging out with strangers and being complimented by strangers. That's horrific. Don't you, I mean, how do you know, what do you do in that situation? You can't.
You're not good at taking a compliment, huh?
No, it's a difficult thing to do. I'm not comfortable at all with compliments, unless it's something that, like, if it's something that I know I've worked very hard for, and instead of it being a compliment, it's more of an elaborate thank you or something like that, that's fine. You know, if someone's just acknowledging, hey, I can see you tried really hard at this, and I appreciate that, thanks. Something like that, that's cool. But when it's, you know, people come up to you and they just give you some kind of weird open-ended compliment and I'm supposed to bask in their approval,
right?
What am I going to do with that? It doesn't land. It feels weird. I feel obligated to diminish it or to make a joke about how that's not true. That creates a weird social interaction. There's all that shit that goes down, and it's just not pleasant, you know?
Interesting.
You can't allow yourself to become, you can't just walk around going, I am fucking awesome. Then you're a terrible person, you know?
Is that the road to being shitty?
The road, yeah, I think so, usually. Unless there has to be, you can't just quietly think you're great, you know?
Right.
It's very hard. It's very hard to do that, and not, even though you don't know. I'm sure that's that whole, you make assumptions, and the way you subconsciously interact with people, it changes if you do, and people will notice. It's for sure.
That's really interesting, because as bad as I am at taking compliments, also, they did give me energy. They gave me sustain when I doubted myself. It'd be like, I didn't know if that was good or bad, but these people gave me really nice, genuine compliments, and I think I'll keep going. As much as I forget them, you never saw them as validation. You never saw them as like some sort of cosmic.
Well, there's an element of it where it's like if I killed or something, if you kill or something, it's like someone's gonna come up and it's like, I know I did well. I appreciate the.
I heard the laughs, asshole.
Yeah, I know, and even the heights of that level of arrogance, but at the same time, it's like, I did the comedy show very, very well. Thank you for telling me, or whatever. But then it's so now what? Now what?
Right.
Because what are we going to talk about now? How are we going to interact with each other now? Because it just makes a really weird, uncomfortable situation. Like I was saying, like it's great if you're trying to be like, oh, you enjoyed the show? Would you like to see or touch my genitals? It's a great opening. Not really my thing. I've never inflicted my sexuality upon others. It's just it's one of those things. Like I don't really participate with the world sexually. Like this is one of these. I have an easy cop out because it's like, I don't know. I don't flirt. I don't fuck. I don't have girlfriends. I don't have to worry about that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do kind of have that, but I really don't. I don't know.
But you deserve that, Matt. Just so you know, you deserve to be able to sexually harass rooms full of uncomfortable women.
And I did for years at a time. But I did that. That was kind of that was the joke, That's the thing.
Right. It's like you're coming off so strongly as this like sexual creature, but if they were to actually talk to you in the back, they would have to push you the whole way to get you into the sack.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, come on, I'm a mess, man. I've always been.
You're a gorgeous Viking monster of a man.
Yeah. But I'm also like every time I've tried to have sex, it's been embarrassing for multiple reasons. So now I have a natural response to avoid it. It's really weird. It's this thing that happens where if I try to flirt with girls and it starts to go well, I panic, and then it's a different feeling and it stops working because all of a sudden I'm like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. There's all this sort of shit, man. I used to, fortunately, we live in a day and age where it's really easy to get your hands on Viagra and stuff, but I had a real problem because I was always so nervous and panicky that I could never get my dick up, even when I really, 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 really wanted to. It just wouldn't happen.
Right,
and
just
so
the
you
fear.
have those experiences more than a few times, and you go, I'm not doing this anymore. I'd rather you just think of me as a nifty guy who's funny than as a weird, sad guy that can't get a dick up,
So you were like doing work on behalf of your audience so that they didn't have to feel uncomfortable seeing you for who you really were?
For seeing that part, for sure.
Or just that part of you?
It's not fun. It's not fun for a woman to be with a man who can't respond normally,
Yeah,
like,
but
that's also not fun. It's a difficult experience for them too.
Sure. I don't deny that. But there's definitely like that element of, being more than just a hard dick, and that women are good at being like, oh, you need some time to do XYZ, like, and get comfortable with me? Yeah, like, I understand that that's a thing, outside of the Hollywood context of sex.
Yeah.
But yeah.
My experiences have been such that I've only had a few, like, long-term relationships, and that it just doesn't work out emotionally because I'm not, like, I don't desperately, I'm already being a jerk. I don't really need someone around. I don't need to be around someone else all the time for some reason. Mm-hmm. So then on top of that, when it's like, fucking is weird, that sort of thing falls apart. And then as a nightclub comedian, as a bar comedian, as a whatever comedian, it's one night stands and you're out. So it's like, if you're not looking for that, you're not, what are you looking for? That's the Stanhope thing. It's either fuck a lot of people or don't ever fuck. for me. I just don't. That's fine. But it's hard when people want to flirt with you and you absolutely do not want to flirt back because you don't want to back yourself into a corner. It's hard to disengage from that sort of thing without being rude, without coming off as rude or mean or something. You know, that is a difficult thing. That's actually a thing I've had happen more than once, where it's like someone's trying to flirt with me. It's like, look, I don't want to have sex. I'm sorry. It's not you. It's me. But it's like what you can't just reject advances. You can't be disinterested. You have to kind of play this weird game where it's like, I'm going to continue to be nice to you in the weird familial way, and hopefully you'll get the message. You know?
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, as always. But you're being a lot nicer to the other person than you are to yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But it's not fun, man. It's not fun. You're sitting there, you know, like it's not fun being naked with someone and not being able to do it. It's just not fun. Mm-hmm. It's really, you know, and after that happens a few times, you just go, I don't want to put myself through this. I don't want to put you through this. You know?
Yeah. You know, but there's definitely many ladies out there who feel the same way that you do. It's just a matter of finding that weird person, connecting with them, even if it's not the mainstream.
Well, you know, and if that happens by random chance, that's fine. But I'm not looking. You know, like I said,
sure,
I don't really feel like something's missing.
Because looking is right. When something's missing, that sucks. And if to live your whole life looking for a piece of puzzle that's missing that you might never find is a shitty way to live your life, for sure. Yeah. But
I'm just, you know,
there's a line between like being open to finding it and then being like, no, I don't deserve this puzzle piece, even if it is hard to find.
I'm open to experience, but like it's just not a thing that I feel like is
not a
missing
drive.
from my life.
It's not a primary drive.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Which is ironic in the grand scale of comedy, where many people, probably primarily men, do get into comedy because they envision themselves getting laid after every show.
Yeah, and I think that is like I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but that is one of the reasons it's not as you know, that's one of the major rewards of comedy, because it is a social enterprise. No matter what you're doing, if you're doing stand-up, that is a social thing that you're doing. It's the art of speaking. You're kind of flirting with the crowd. I mean, that's, you know, again, not really, because you're not trying to arouse them sexually, but you're doing word games with the crowd. You know,
you're comedy flirting. Yeah, you're trying to arouse parts of them. Yeah, for sure. Right,
and so if you're not looking for social rewards from comedy, then it probably doesn't have much to offer, you know? And that's, to be clear, I still have, like, you and even though we haven't spoken in a long time, I consider you a lifelong friend. There's a lot of people that I met out of that. I'm very fortunate, you know, my circle of friends is greatly enriched by doing stand-up. That's actually one of the best things, is that now I know all these weirdos who are funny, and they also they're like keyed into their own personalities, and, you know, that's really great. That's been one of the best things. That's one of the reasons why I don't regret doing comedy. It's just because of the people that I still have in my life. But at the same time, if you're not looking for social rewards, you shouldn't do a social art, you know?
Do you think that there is, knowing this, a different way you could have pursued comedy in a different lane or something that might have been a better fit?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I'm not, you know, 100% sure, but I think I'm the kind of guy, the career trajectory, if I had moved out to New York or LA or something when I was relatively young, I could have probably gotten my shit to a level of straightness where my reputation would have got me some kind of writing gig. And I probably would have liked that a lot. And I probably would be one of those people where it's a name, but you never, you know, I think I could have flown in that world a little bit.
Right.
But then you hear about how horrible that is, because it's 12 hours sitting in a room trying to come up with one more goddamn joke, you know?
Right, working for anything from The Onion to writing for a show, or Yeah,
no, that sort of thing is still attractive to me. I do kind of think about that. It would be, I don't know. It would be cool to try and do some kind of something like that. But who knows, you know, how does one even engage in that? And am I completely coming from the world I come from now is so divorced from all of that. I don't know any of the customs or any of the way, you know, that sort of stuff.
Right, being rusty in that world. Yeah, it's definitely weird. When I thought about going on in comedy and eventually having my own writer's room full of comedians who I love, like you were one of them, definitely. But like, those are long faded dreams now, or kind of challenged dreams in the comedy
not
reality.
Only that, but if you were still like if you were putting a show together now, you would and should absolutely put someone who's still doing comedy in that room, not me. There's that element of it too.
Yeah. It was weird doing my last year of shows, my monthly Casa de Jaja. I kept it going here in Denver a little bit, but it just never felt the same as Miami. It had good nights and bad nights, but by the time I did it last year, just to kind of reaffirm my commitment to comedy, be like, well, this will keep me in the game, all the comedians I knew, like half of them were almost in my position at this point, where they were half doing comedy and half not. So when I was booking my shows, I had a couple people who were still fresh and good, and maybe one or two new people, but then I'd have a couple people on my category who would they'd go up there, and sometimes they did great, sometimes they didn't, but there was always that like, man, what are my jokes, or it's been a while, or and I was like, oh boy, this is a sign. I don't know what's happening, but
yeah, no, because to really do it, you do have to do it. You have to be sharp. It's like cage fighting or something in that way, where you do have to be sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, even if you were good, you can still hit a bag pretty hard every once in a while or something, but it's different,
Right, when the bag hits back.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling when the bag hits back.
I'll drink to that.
No, I don't know, man. There is still definitely a part of me. I feel like I have another moment of, oh God. Even when I try to,
you don't even let yourself say it. You're not letting yourself
collapse into self-hatred. Yeah, but I do. I feel like I have a brain that can produce things that will delight other people. And it would be interesting to try and find a way to pursue that. But I'm really not interested in having my name and face be the brand, and I'm really not interested in it being this sort of weird fight.
The vehicle for it all. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can get people to feel these incredible feelings without your face being the one to tell them to feel those things.
Yeah. Or without it being, we're going to see this man tonight,
Right. Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, why do people go out and see stand-up comedians? Because they make them feel a certain way that they don't get to feel regularly in their life.
Some people really love being that guy. And it's not a wrong thing either.
I know.
want to be clear. It's just not who I am.
Doesn't that suck to not want to be that guy? Like, I get it. It's just so counter to, stand-up comedy's all ego and everything, and I, like you, I come from a place where I'm like trying to forget my ego, and my dad's fucking Buddhist. Let go of the ego, and then stand-up comedy's like, ego, you must lock in on your ego. Or it doesn't matter the jokes as much as who's saying them, and if it feeds into your greater personality, because people need to know you. People need to feel like they know you.
Yeah, that's one of those, like, as a post-comedian, when you look at it, people always, they want to say, you're trying to say something that everyone can relate to, and that's not really true. What you're trying to say is something so that so others can relate to the way you're saying it. It still has to be coming from you. It has to be, if it's not your unique thing, if it's you're the weird lens the light is going through, and then it's being able to transmit those ideas to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I love humor as a concept. That's definitely like an elemental part of who I am as a person. There's people who choose to be serious. There's people who, they're just the different ways they deal with the world. And I'm definitely not one of those people. We all know this is all bullshit, right? That's kind of.
Right. And you can laugh or you can cry, and we choose laugh.
Yeah. I choose to laugh instead of cry. That's exactly it. Or be angry, or be, any of the other possible emotional responses.
Right. Cycle through them, but laughter is the main one. Right.
Right. And I think, there is that laughter meditation and all that sort of shit. I do think that there is that when you give yourself the permission to laugh at something, especially something weird, horrible, uncomfortable, whatever, that is, you give yourself sort of a bird's eye view of it. It is sort of a mindfulness technique where now it's not you in that situation, it's you above it, and you can kind of see the gears and strings and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really helpful and healthy thing, but not everybody, and that's that's why comedy in prescribed situations as opposed to just being out on the street making coronavirus jokes right now or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Tiger King. Yeah.
Tiger King. It's amazing. Everybody loves weirdos. That one really. It's amazing how some things like perfect time, perfect place.
Yeah.
You got to wonder how that would have landed if America hadn't been staring at its TV in this particular moment. Because it is a cool story. It's a fun and interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of America. It's America doing a People of Walmart.
Totally right. And 3 months ago, who knows if people would have glanced twice at it compared to the way that people are obsessed about it now.
Yeah.
Right, and that's very much like comedy in itself. Like maybe the thing you were doing exactly would have been a hit at a certain time in a certain place, but it wasn't. Or maybe it never would have been. But
in my 20s, I didn't put out any albums or anything, but what I did was probably comparable to being in a really good local band that did a little bit and then it all fell apart. And that's great. And I don't really have anything, I have embarrassing moments like I've shared with you, but I'm not really ashamed of what I became or of anything I did, and so that's kind of cool. I didn't put out a couple demos and an album but I did something like that, and it lives in that kind of brain space for me,
Right. There's a lot of recordings of you out there.
Yeah. Digital archaeologists of the future. This person did something. We don't know what exactly.
That's a real healthy way to look at it. The no regrets kind of a thing.
People that know me now I don't tell people, like you were talking about, there is that element of shame. So when I meet new people, I don't really tell them for a long time. Comedy's still a big part of my life.
Do you see yourself ever producing a comedic work or doing some sort of comedy project in the future, or just being fine with the fact that comedy has enriched your life?
Yeah, I think I understand both of those. I think I do. I'm all the time bubbling with that sort of shit. Or I have a few weird, half-formed projects in my mind that are all, difficult to describe. But yeah, all the time that sort of shit, because it's just impossible to kind of get it out of your head. And so then but I also, I play guitar, I play drums, I'm never going to be remotely, I'm not good at those things. I do them for the love of doing those things. You know what I mean? I'm a middling guitar player and I'm a terrible drummer. I've just fun. You do it for the joy of doing it. I still draw, I still paint, reading is not really an artistic thing per se, but there's an element of chasing down aesthetic elements and of chasing down feelings and tones and shit.
For sure.
You can do that sort of shit for the love of doing it. And that goes back to, like you were saying, the hobbyist. The hobbyist being the true amateur, because the amateur, it literally means one who loves. It's the people who do things for the love of doing them. So I still definitely, I engage in that sort of behavior, that sort of deviant, degenerate behavior. Instead of being like a joke I'm writing, it's just like, here's a thing I came up with. I think it will delight you.
Somehow pure.
It's really nice.
More pure, yeah.
It's really nice. I don't know.
Yeah, you do know. Don't say
I do know, goddamn.
Don't say you don't know. You do know.
Yeah. So mostly my life has been enriched by having done comedy. I don't necessarily regret doing it. It's like you were saying, it's another weird experience that I can throw on the pile with all the other crazy shit that I've experienced in my life. So in some ways, I'm oddly competent for no reason in unusual situations.
It's such an X factor.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I kind of wish I hadn't just let myself lean into being the king of the bar comics.
Right. I mean, you were that comic.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I think I've got a certain toolkit that not everybody has. I do think I could do something, but fame and money and all that sort of shit, that's not even in the equation necessarily. But it's certainly possible that I could come up with something or get a weird itch again and figure out a way to try and give it another go. And I'm a single guy. I got a house that's paid for. Relatively stable. We'll see. I'm expecting to not have a job here in the next week or so, but maybe after the virus, maybe I'll get it back and all that sort of shit. Who knows? But the point is, I have the kind of life where I could go for it again if I really wanted to, in some way. And it wouldn't be, now with the wisdom that I have, I don't think I would try stand-up again. I don't think I would ever honestly do stand-up like this is what I'm going to do for a career. I don't think that that's the way to do it. That said, it could be there's some guys who just kind of have that in the tool belt. I don't know, man. I think being a writer, doing something like that seems a little bit more interesting to me. Being involved in the creative process with other people, rather than, like I said, rather than my name and face being the brand.
Just the solo thing of comedy, right? Of stand-up.
Yeah, podcasting is very attractive to me. It's a thing, I mean, it's a crowded space right now and all that sort of shit. I'm sure I don't need to express all that sort of shit to you.
It is, but at the same point, comedy's crowded, entertainment's crowded. It ain't ever going to be, it's never going to be ideal. So if you want to do something, do it. But yeah, those kind of warnings of having been in the entertainment industry, at least somewhat.
Yeah. I think, but that's like you were saying, if you had known more about how YouTube and shit worked, like, you would have done it more than once with the Casa de Haha show, the last Miami thing we did.
Yeah.
It's the repetition, it's the creation of content. That's that sort of world, and that's kind of cool actually for the quote unquote amateur, because then you got to pump out a bunch of shit. It's back to the joy of doing it.
Right, and that's their open mic is your early shit is your bad shit, and you eventually get to the good shit. Even YouTube, I watch a ton of YouTube these days, because I'm trying to get people to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please, Daniel Reskin. And you can tell, you sort the videos by time, and then you scroll, even these people with millions of subscribers, you go to the bottom, and they're all the same kind of raw. It takes time no matter what you're doing to get good at it. And I think stand-up comedy as a huge leg up can make you effective at so many things if you can develop the skill set for it, which I, like you, am very thankful for it. But, yeah, it's weird to think of, if you had done this, if you had done that. What advice would you have given a young Matt who just started comedy?
Don't listen to other people.
And then he'd say, fuck you, you're in other people.
Well, I'm not trying to play a word, but it's one of those. Almost every time anybody tried to give me advice, it was the wrong advice. Almost every time it was someone trying to make me more like them. Almost every time it was what I needed to do was like I needed to be more up my own ass about it. I needed to just do the kind of shit you wanted to do, believe the dream, and get the fuck out while you can, And I do think too, because the combination, I was young and unemployed, and so I was used to having these endless stretches of unspecified time where I could just do whatever I wanted and sleep whenever I want, and then get up and get high and just sit on the computer and read random Wikipedia articles all day, and it's 7 o'clock, now I got to drive to Boca or whatever. And so I definitely, time was not a limited resource. I got used to time just being a thing, and that's not necessarily the case even when it feels that way. So I definitely, it would have been nice if I'd used some of that time better. I used to, when I really was just doing it without any knowledge of what I felt I was supposed to be doing it, there's a freeness to it where you can go and do and say things that you probably wouldn't if you were really thinking about it.
Well, there's a million avenues to take it. I've already taken a ton of your time. Yeah, I think we're getting at 3 hours here, so I don't want to.
Goddamn.
It's been
putting up Rogan numbers here.
It's been fucking fantastic to catch up with you, and I'm beating myself up for not doing it sooner.
Yeah, man, it's good. It's good to hear from you too, dude. It's great. I like I said, I consider you a forever friend.
Definitely.
And it's cool to hear from you. We've shared a lot of crazy experiences. We had a lot of fun together. That little circle of friends we had down in South Florida was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Blood is thicker than water is an often malappropriated expression because people think it means you're with family. But the original expression is the blood of the battlefield is thicker than the water of the womb. And it basically means the people you're in the shit with are your real family. You know what I mean?
Amen. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But yeah, that makes total sense. And it is true. I mean, comedians are constantly avoiding their families to go hang out with people they barely know and drink a beer and smoke a cigarette.
And be way more honest with them than anyone else in their real life,
Yes. But any final messages to our listeners be them grizzled comedy veterans or fresh-faced comedy hopefuls.
Life is completely meaningless, and that's what makes you completely free. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I got.
I love it. That's the blurb for the cast. I love it. That's fantastic. Thank you for incredibly insightful and interesting conversation, Matt.
Yeah, you too, man. Right back at you.
Cool. All right, take it easy and adios.
Love you, buddy. Hail Satan.
Love you back, Satan.